Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is absolutely shaking up pharmaceutical manufacturing compliance, digital validation 4.0. Look, for the longest time, the life sciences industry has been running on compliance models that honestly were built for the era of paper files and giant metal filing cabinets. But the tech landscape is shifting so fast right now, and our compliance frameworks, well, they have to evolve right alongside our digital infrastructure.
So, let me ask you a direct question right off the bat. Are your legacy validation practices impeding your ability to innovate? I mean, really think about it. We've had 2 solid decades of regulators practically begging for more flexible, risk-based approaches, yet so many organizations are just stuck in these incredibly rigid, conventional methodologies. If your current compliance setup feels like an anchor dragging behind your operations, you are absolutely in the right place today.
Here is a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll start with number 1, the legacy validation bottleneck. Then 2, defining validation 4.0. Number 3, moving beyond the golden 3. 4, designing for data integrity. And finally, number 5, driving a cultural shift. Let's get right into it.
All right, Section 1, the legacy validation bottleneck. Because to understand the fix, we really have to look at the flaw first.
The core problem is that manufacturing systems have become incredibly dynamic, but validation has stayed totally static. You can see the stark contrast here. On one side, you have the old way, static paper silos, manual signatures, decentralized documents, basically a recipe for massive inefficiency. And on the other side, dynamic, cloud-integrated frameworks giving us real-time data integrity. The entire goal here is to bridge this gap and tear down those legacy inefficiencies so you can actually be agile.
The real tragedy of this legacy bottleneck is what happens to your information. Traditional validation revolves around these rigid, predefined protocols and one-time qualification events. It just completely fails to reflect the reality of a modern manufacturing floor. You have digital systems constantly spitting out vast amounts of data, yet so much of that goldmine remains entirely underutilized once that initial validation is marked complete. It's like tossing out 99% of your operational intelligence just because you checked a box.
Which brings us to Section 2, defining validation 4.0, and seeing how it fits into the broader Industry 4.0 ecosystem.
So what is this exactly? Well, here's our baseline. Validation 4.0 isn't just some marketing buzzword. It's a formalized, risk-based method. It's about a uniform, coordinated approach to system validation that is deeply rooted in the Pharma 4.0 operating model. It essentially demands that you have a thorough control plan, high digital maturity, and this is key, data integrity baked in by design.
But to actually pull this off, you need an incredibly deep understanding of your products and processes. It's all about deep data integration across the entire value chain. The data cannot live in silos. It needs to be immediately visible to absolutely everyone who needs it to make a decision.
And honestly, this is where modern tech becomes your best friend. Things like IoT, the Internet of Things, they are critical enablers here. They capture and broadcast key info across the whole ecosystem. This constant, living connectivity is what makes the continuous digital approach of Validation 4.0 possible, letting us finally ditch those isolated point-in-time checks.
Okay, moving right along to Section 3, beyond the golden 3. We have to tackle one of the most stubborn habits in traditional validation. We've all heard of the golden 3 qualification runs, right? But I want you to really ask yourself, are 3 runs actually proving control, or are you just fulfilling a checklist? The reality is, 3 runs are rarely statistically meaningful. Doing a discrete run 3 times simply does not capture how a process varies over time. All it really answers is, how many runs did we do, instead of, are we actually in control? And that is the ultimate paradigm shift. You don't prove control just by repeating something 3 times. You prove it by deeply understanding your critical process parameters and constantly verifying them. Validation 4.0 demands we look at validation as a living, breathing, continuous demonstration of control. It's not a discrete chore you finish and forget about.
In this new model, you build your validation evidence incrementally. It starts way back in development, it scales up smoothly during the clinical phases, and then it matures directly into commercial manufacturing. Because you have digital visibility, your teams can tailor their efforts based on actual, real-world risk across all these phases. Let's look at the mechanics of how this works day-to-day in Section 4, designing for data integrity. The big takeaway here is that you have to build design controls in early and continuously. A holistic check at the end of the line just doesn't cut it anymore. We're talking about quality by design,
understanding the product well enough to implement the right controls from day one. Data integrity by design, making sure siloed or bad data can't poison your process. And of course, moving completely away from paper into modern, integrated digital environments.
When you set up these digital ecosystems correctly, it is a game changer. The data just flows across traditionally siloed functions. Your manufacturing execution systems, your LIMS, your electronic quality systems, they are finally all talking to each other. Which means you can check your validation status and control effectiveness in real time, literally anytime you want.
And what does all that integrated data buy you? It buys you feedback loops. Historically, quality risk management has been pretty subjective. But with hard data, teams can move way beyond static assumptions. You can actively adjust your controls based on continuous evidence. You aren't guessing where the risks are anymore. You know exactly where they are.
Finally, Section 5, driving a cultural shift, because tech is only half the battle.
Adopting Validation 4.0 is absolutely not just an IT project. It's a massive transformation of your people and your culture. Moving to this approach impacts the entire organization. You need dedicated training, entirely new skill sets to grasp both the tech and the control strategy, and honestly, a brand new way of measuring success.
The mindset of validation professionals has to undergo a fundamental shift. We have to stop obsessing over producing static documentation just for the sake of procedural compliance. The new culture has to prioritize patient safety, product quality, and a real-time, continuous grip on the manufacturing process itself.
When you actually align the tech with the culture, the ROI is undeniable. You maintain the absolute highest standards of safety, but you gain incredible agility. Look at the impacts: optimal product quality through better critical thinking, lower overall operational costs, early risk mitigation through design controls, and for sure, a much quicker time to market because you're leveraging automation.
So I'm going to leave you with this one final thought today. As our industry charges deeper into the digital age, you really have to make a choice. Are you going to keep burning resources producing static documentation that just sits on a shelf collecting dust? Or are you going to ditch those legacy habits, embrace continuous control, and build a living body of evidence to secure your digital future? The paradigm has shifted. It's time to step into Validation 4.0. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep learning.